Welcome back to the Success Publishing Videocast. My name is Jessica Soto. I am here with one of our authors, Josh Schonert from Breakthrough Success, and we love interviewing our authors to shine a light on their stories and let them share their amazing story with the world. So welcome, Josh.
Thank you.
Could you give us a little, the cliff notes real quick to start this off of who you are, where you are in the world?
Sure. Yeah. So as you said, my name's Josh. I live in North Dakota in the US here. I grew up actually in California, so I'm kind of a transplant, but I've been here for like half my life. So I guess I can't really call it a transplant anymore. I'm here. But yeah, I've been for many years, I've been in the software technology world. I've done support and done coding and things like that. And I do digital marketing as well, which a lot of people don't realize that digital marketing and like software and coding and support, it all kind of goes together because in one way or another, you're helping people. So it's either you're helping people with software or you're helping people, with digital marketing. So, they kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, I've got two kids, two boys. They're 13 and 5. And I've been married for 12 years and have been with my wife for 16 years now, going on 17 years. So definitely have lived a nice full life already. So
yeah, that's awesome. And can we see your recently published book with you on
yes,
the cover?
I have it right here.
Yes. How did that feel to get that in the mail and hold it?
Oh man, the first time I opened the box. So quick funny story is we get the box in the mail and we had been kind of starting to get some Christmas presents through and other things like that because I got it in November. And so we were going through and my wife had just been opening boxes just to kind of, do whatever and see what comes in. And all of a sudden I hear, oh no. And she had opened the box and realized it was my books. And so she's like, I'm so sorry. And I said, you know what, it's fine. I won't even look at it. I'll just close the box back up, tape it back up, and then I'll do my unboxing video. And so
Nice.
I didn't get to lose out on that experience. And it was amazing because, it's one thing when you're going through the editing process and you see the cover and you see everything, but then being able to hold your book for the first time, it was just such a surreal feeling to be able to hold it up, and holding onto my book and looking at it and looking at the cover, realizing, that's me on the cover of the book.
Yeah.
And it's literally a dream come true.
And then you said you have two sons. Was there any reaction from them? They're very different ages, so.
Yeah, so it was interesting when they first saw it because my youngest, he was like, oh cool, he's 5, so for him it's just like, oh that's cool. My oldest, he was like, you're on a book, Dad. And I was like, I know, right? It's like this is really cool. And so it was cool to see my oldest, who he's into, he loves reading books, he loves doing that kind of stuff, but he's also kind of a technical wizard like I am. And so he sees some of this stuff and it's a different feeling because it's one thing when he sees a video of me or he sees a post from me or something like that, but to see your dad on a book is a whole different world.
That is so cool. I love that. So let's dive into your story a little bit more. Can you give us a little more background on who you are and what actually brought you to becoming an author?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, so to get into how I got into the authorship pieces, when I get into the digital marketing world, I went from being just a tech support guy and started getting into this world. And one of the things that I found that was really interesting is that, I started being able to help people and getting people's ecosystems and, build value and be able to, take my technology expertise and give it out to other people that are struggling with things like websites and automation and stuff like that. And that led me into getting involved with other people, and specifically Matt Morris, who, is one of the co-authors in the book. He's the one who runs the program basically. And getting into his ecosystem, I realized that there was an opportunity to provide even more value out to my audience. And so I started thinking about the things that I've gone through in life and just the things that have helped me overcome the challenges that I've gone through, and just the things that I've gone through that other people may be going through themselves. And it pushed me to really believe that my story, my life, the things from anywhere from being mugged to bankruptcy to medical turmoil to my wife almost dying in the bathroom, like all these things that people just don't realize that other people deal with. I knew that I had that kind of story that I could put out there and let people know that they're not alone. And so that led to really knowing that I had something to share, because that was always my thing. I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to be part of something bigger than myself, but I never knew what I was going to talk about. And I always thought that I had to be some, big shot, high level person to be able to do this. And I realized that there's people out there that are just like me, or, people that are thinking that they're alone in the world because they're dealing with all these problems. And, it's one thing to hear it from somebody else who's at the same level as you. It's another thing to hear it from somebody who's achieved a level of success and know that they came from where you're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I knew. I was like, people need to know that this, what they're going through isn't the end all. Like, that's not the last thing they're going to experience. And so it was just the right moment at the right time. And being connected with Matt, it just made sense to say, you know what, this is the time to tell the world what we've been through, because they need to know that they can make it.
Yeah. I mean, you went through many things, even just from the young age of 2. I was reading in your chapter, and I know that you were saying that your upbringing struggles helped you get through the adult struggles, which you went through many things as well, many like life changing things. But when is it that you realized that those things you went through at the young age helped you go through the things now and continuing?
I would say it was after the fact. And interestingly enough, when doing a project like this, obviously being a co-author in a book, you only have so much space to tell a story. And so, and we might talk about that a little bit later, but the point that I realized it was actually just recently, and it was before writing the book. I was talking with a friend of mine who's going through a really, really tough time right now. And he's dealing with custody battles and shit like that. And sorry, excuse me. That's how much it means to me. I'm passionate about this. But anyways, so he's going through all these different things, custody battles and stuff. And the thing that I realized was that he hadn't been through a lot of these struggles at a young age. And so he's just now learning how to go through this stuff. And he comes to me and he's like, what do I do? And I relate back to what I went through as a child and what I went through as, a teen, and being, the reason I'm up in North Dakota is because my dad moved up here when I was like 12 or 13. And so I was going back and forth from California to North Dakota as a teenager. Half the summer was 2,000 miles away from all my friends. So what was interesting is being able to understand how to manage those emotions, how to manage those challenges, how to, not believe that my life is ending because I'm away from my friends for a number of weeks, but also like, going through as a child, going through custody battles where my parents fought over me back and forth, going through one parent pitting me against the other parent and all those things that now my friend is going through. That's the kind of stuff that I started realizing, like, I was fortunate to go through a lot of these things early on. So that way, as life continues to throw curveballs at me, I understand how I can just continue to push through. I can persevere. I can deliver a solution to a problem without having to worry about being stressed out, because I can think back to, hey, I've gone through worse already. So I might as well push through this one too.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the point that I realized it was when I start seeing other people go through the same struggles I went through, and I knew how to get through them because I've been through it. And so that's like, I've got a few different friends that they come to me for certain things. One comes to me for marriage issues because he's like, I don't know what to do. And, he's 5-6 years older than I am, newly married. And so he's like, hey, how did your wife, you and your wife get through this situation? I've got another friend that does business stuff, and he comes to me and says, how are you pushing through to do these things? And it's the experiences we have, we may not know it at the time, but those are preparing us to help other people go through those same things.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you keep talking about how we're able to take what we're going so that we can show others. I mean, that's what success publishing co-authors are all about, is saying, hey, I have this story. I used to think that maybe it's just me, but when I share it, if I at least touch one other person, and I'm sure multiple people, then it just is this beautiful domino effect where everyone learns, oh, it's not just me. This person went through this, or I can relate in this way. And I love that. Yeah, I heard you say the word fortunate, that you went, you're fortunate to have gone through these things so that you can learn and also help others. I forget, what was the title of your chapter? I loved the title and I can't think of the exact words right now.
It's graceful tenacity.
Yeah, I loved can you tell a little bit more about how you came up with that?
So this is interesting. I actually didn't come up with the title. Steve Moreland, who is the director of publishing, I think, for Success Publishing. So him and I were having our initial conversation. And this is what's really interesting for me. And I don't say this to like pat myself on the back or anything like that, but through the process of that interview, like I came up with everything I wanted to do with the chapter, which I think is what helped Steve just basically be like, okay, you're in this book. Like, come on, let's go. Because we were talking about it and I was already brainstorming like, oh, I could put this in there. I could put that in there. And he said something, and he said, it's almost like you have a graceful tenacity about yourself. And I went, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the name of the chapter. And he just kind of was like, did we just name your chapter? And I was like, I think so. And he's like, I guess there's no choice now. You have to be in the book.
Yeah.
So, but it came from that because, when you hear something and it just sticks, like it hits you to the core and you just go, whoa, like that's just so profound. And people it's almost like an oxymoron, right? Like people who are tenacious, you don't think of them as being graceful. And people who are graceful, you don't think of them as being tenacious. So it's like you put those two words together and it really flows on exactly what my chapter goes through, is just all these things, just, punch after punch after punch, and then still push through and still persevere and not lose ourselves in the process. And it even to this day, like it hits me so deep because it describes everything about me in my entire life.
Yeah. I'm reading the chapter and speaking with you, I would definitely say that it sums it up perfectly, and I love it.
Thank you.
So what is it like, if there was one thing that readers got out of your story when they read it, what would you want them to get?
Honestly, it's that it doesn't matter what life throws at you. You always have the choice to either stay down or get up. And that's the thing is, one of the testimonials in the book I love is my buddy Scott, and he's been my best friend for years. And, he says in there, we're big comic book geeks. And so the first line he says is, why do we fall, Bruce? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up. And that's a line from the Batman series where Alfred, is teaching Bruce how to be Batman.
Yeah.
And one of the things with that is that's a perfect quote. That is what life really did to me, is it knocked me down and then said, all right, why did you get knocked down? Did you get knocked down to stay there? Or did you get knocked down so you can learn how to get back up time and time again? And that's the thing I'll say is, like, everybody that's alive right now, and I know this is kind of a profound thought, but think about this, is every person that's alive in this world has survived all of their worst days so far. So if you can survive all of the worst days you've had, why can't you survive the rest of them?
Yeah.
And it's hard because some people, they get those feelings, and I've lost friends to this too, where they just feel it's too much and they can't go on. And that's a personal choice that they make. But I don't believe that that's the only choice out there, and I believe that every person deserves the right to pick themselves back up and say, okay, I had this happen. I got through it. I'm picking myself up. I'm going to learn from the experience and I'm going to move on. I don't believe that there's failure in this world. We either win or we learn. So that's the number one thing, is when you're reading my chapter, and even any of the content in this book, is you just have to know that there's always a better thing on the next end of that challenge, right? You know, like the quote I have in my book, with every adversity, there's a seed of equal or greater benefit on the other side of that. You know, it's there's always something there that's going to get better. You just have to be willing to push through.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I'm constantly thinking, I have a daughter, and anytime we go through some crazy thing, I'm like, okay, we have been through many things before. We can now take on this challenge.
Yep.
And yeah, or with any challenge, it's always, okay, I'm allowed to be disappointed, and then I need to figure out what I'm learning from this and move on.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I love that. And then have you felt any sort of identity shift now that you've become an author, or how you feel about yourself?
Yeah. And I think the coolest thing is just knowing that I've been able to tell my story in a way that really portrays what I've gone through without people seeing me at face value. Because, you know, I haven't always been this graceful person, you know, like going through a lot of these challenges. You know, I dealt with anger issues, I dealt with addiction, I dealt with, you know, not being like commitment issues. I mean, my wife and I have had plenty of times where we've split up and got back together and even moved apart, and like all these things that people don't see under the surface. And you know, that's one of the things that I wanted to portray in this book, is that people can see me for who I am at my core, not just who they see, you know, on camera and things like that. And it's hard because people don't understand that until they get the opportunity to read the book. And something that I will say that has really helped with the identity piece of it is, being an author is one thing. And even, yes, I mean, the book hit bestseller lists in the day of launch. And so that's awesome. But all of that stuff means nothing compared to the responses I get from people when they, like, even my grandparents read it and they said, hey, we had no idea. And they said, we had no clue that you were going through all these things. And like, I wish you would have told us, because we might have been able to help. And I told them, I said, if I would have told everybody when I was going through these challenges, would I be the person I am today, knowing that I worked through these things with my wife and myself and the people who were close to us in that matter? And would it have made any difference in my tenacity if I would have reached out to somebody and said, hey, I need your help? And they, you know, maybe somebody helped us pay for those medical bills and we never went through bankruptcy. Would we be where we're at now financially if we never experienced that lowest of lows in our financial state? Or, you know, if we were going through marital problems and we never, you know, hit rock bottom in our marriage and went to therapy and did all these things, would I have been able to learn how to be a better husband if I didn't experience that? If somebody just was like, oh, fix these two little things and you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, that's the kind of stuff that I think about. And the identity is that I did, you know, between my wife and I, and, you know, the friends that I was with, those things are my challenges that I went through with the people that were involved in those. And that shaped who I am today. And knowing that people are coming back saying, I love your story, but I didn't know. And it's like, that tells me that who I am, they're seeing me, the authentic me, not me based on who those challenges were.
Yeah.
And that's the identity piece, is that it's almost solidifying that my authenticity is showing through my content and through my relationships, because people are seeing me for who I am, not for who you know, what I went through or who I used to be. And now people are seeing the other side of it going, wow, we had no idea. And I'm like, that's exactly the reason why I didn't tell anybody. And it's not that I didn't want people involved. I didn't want help. We got plenty of help, but it's the help we needed to get through these, not the help we, you know, it's hard to
like
distinguish that. Right.
Yeah.
So the identity piece of it is that I get to solidify who I am as a person. And I get to then reference now my book when people go, well, what have you been through? And it's like, let me get you a copy of my book quick.
That's awesome. I love that. What was the best surprise out of this whole experience?
Honestly, it's been the response. I mean, I did not expect so many positive responses. I mean, there's already a couple of reviews on the book of people saying that it's well written, and, they love the style. One person even said that they believed that I was talking straight to them, like that they were the person that this was meant
That's
to be
awesome.
written for. People reaching out and congratulating me, people I haven't talked to in years are coming out and saying, hey, we saw your book, we love it, we read it, it's awesome. And that's the biggest surprise to me, because I came into this whole thing, I'll be honest, with zero expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I came into it with, you know what, I'm going to publish it, we'll see what happens. And funny enough, I almost wasn't even going to do a launch. I was almost going to just say, you know what, I've got my book, I'm just going to throw a link up somewhere and we'll see what happens. And something inside of me said, you got to do a launch. You got to show people what you've done. And the surprise, I mean, the amount of people that were there during the launch, I mean, dozens of people online commenting on the video, people through social media channels that were reaching out and messaging me and congratulating me, people from all over the world that are buying the book and reading it and commenting on it. It's almost overwhelming to be honest, because I wasn't expecting that kind of response. And even so, I mean, people that have reached out and said, hey, can you come speak in my group? Can you come speak for my company? Can you do these things? And it's like, I've never really had a dream of being a public speaker. I was always afraid of getting up and speaking in front of people. And now I'm realizing that I guess I've always been good at it. I just never believed in it. And so now that people are asking me to, it's kind of like, okay, maybe that's another direction that life can take me.
Yeah. That's the next step in making an impact, is reaching more ears.
Right.
That's so cool. And then what's next for you now that you've published, you're an author, you're getting all of these reach outs? What do you feel is the next step?
Well, I mean, number one is I'm already thinking about what the next book is going to be about, and looking at I didn't want to touch on too much of it later or earlier, because I knew that this question was going to come up. So I'm already putting together a plan for the next book, writing some content, and it's going to be something that I'm going to be looking at. It's going to be all me. And the goal is to expand. So it's almost like this is like a prequel to the book, because I'm going to expand a lot on some of these topics, and it's going to be tough, because even like during my launch, I read my chapter during my launch, and there's a couple pieces in my chapter that I had a really hard time reading, just because things that happened in life that were really, really hurtful, but not necessarily in a way that I was like, somebody hurt me, but it's just things that I went through that were really hard to repeat. So I know it's going to be really tough to write it, but being able to expand, like some of these things that happened can be an entire chapter in themselves.
Oh yeah.
And so the goal is to basically expand on that and essentially do a whole journey book of from the beginning all the way through all the challenges, what got us through those challenges, how we were able to get through them, what came after each one, and basically a book of a timeline. And the goal is that there's the ultimate goal. So like right now I work during the day, I do digital marketing and content marketing in the evenings and part-time. And eventually that's going to be my full-time gig. Is, I'm working on building a YouTube channel. I love content creation. I love being able to put things out there that can help people, information that can help people move forward. And so once that becomes the full-time gig, that will be my final chapter, is the ladder to success, basically, of like, I hit that top rung in the ladder on my goal chart. And that's where that final chapter is going to be of, I reached my goal. This is what it feels like. This is where it is. And then that's when the book will get published. So could be a year from now, could be 5 years from now, who knows, but that's the immediate next step for that. And then just continuing to provide value to others. One of the things that some mentors that I have in the digital marketing world, something that we live by, is be the change that we want to see in the world. So that's what I'm doing. That's the next step, is to be more of that change and deliver more of that impact.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see that book come out. That'll be
it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a labor of love, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It was so
Thank
fun
you.
getting to know you more and hearing your story a little bit more. Again, you can find Josh Schonert.
Yep, you got
Again,
it.
you can find Josh Schonert on Amazon.com, Breakthrough Leadership. And thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much.